You're not welcome at our Christmas dinner anymore. You bring nothing but negativity to this family." That's what my sister Vanessa told me 3 months ago when she decided I wasn't good enough to sit at her perfect holiday table. What she didn't know was that I was the anonymous mortgage holder who had been preventing her family's foreclosure for the past 2 years. Stick around, and I'll tell you exactly what happened when my name finally appeared on their foreclosure. Notice, before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Hello everyone, my name is Isabella Rodriguez, and I'm 34 years old. I live in Millbrook Heights, a quiet suburb about 40 minutes outside of Denver, Colorado. For the past 8 years, I've been running a successful property investment company called Cascade Holdings. What started as a small real estate venture with my life savings of $12,000 has grown into a business that now manages over 200 properties across 3 states. But this story isn't really about my business success. It's about family, betrayal, and what happens when people take your kindness for weakness. The events I'm about to share with you happened just 3 months ago, right before what should have been a beautiful family Christmas. Instead, it became the day that changed everything between me and my sister's family forever. You see, my sister Vanessa has always been what you might call the golden child in our family. She married young to her college sweetheart, Marcus Thompson, when she was just 23. Marcus works as a regional sales manager for a pharmaceutical company, making around $75,000 a year. They have 2 beautiful children, 8-year-old twins named Sophia and Daniel. On paper, they looked like the perfect American family living in their charming 2-story colonial house on Maple Ridge Avenue in the prestigious Riverside Oaks neighborhood. But here's what most people didn't know about Vanessa and Marcus. They were absolutely terrible with money. Despite Marcus's decent salary and Vanessa's part-time job as a dental hygienist, they lived paycheck to paycheck. Designer clothes for the kids, expensive family vacations they couldn't afford, a luxury SUV with payments that ate up nearly a quarter of their monthly income, and credit card debt that kept climbing higher and higher. Meanwhile, I had always been seen as the different one in the family. While Vanessa followed the traditional path of marriage and children, I chose to focus on building my career. I worked 16-hour days, lived in a modest apartment for years while saving every penny, and slowly built my real estate empire from the ground up. But in my family's eyes, I was just the workaholic sister who was too busy to settle down and start a real family. The truth is, I've always loved Vanessa deeply, despite our differences. She's 4 years younger than me, and growing up, I was the one who helped her with homework, drove her to dance classes, and protected her from bullies at school. Even as adults, even when she made comments about my lonely lifestyle or questioned why I was still single, I never stopped caring about her happiness and well-being. 3 months ago, everything came to a head during what was supposed to be our annual family planning call for Christmas dinner. Every year, our extended family gathers at Vanessa's house because she has the biggest dining room and loves to play hostess. It's always been a tradition I looked forward to, seeing my niece and nephew, catching up with our cousins, and enjoying Vanessa's incredible cooking. But this year was different. When I called Vanessa to ask what I could bring to contribute to the meal, her voice was cold and distant. She said she needed to talk to me about Christmas, and that conversation changed everything between us. "Isabella," she said, her tone formal and rehearsed like she had practiced this speech. "Marcus and I have been talking, and we've decided that this year's Christmas dinner needs to be more intimate. Just the immediate family." I was confused. "But I am immediate family, Vanessa. I'm your sister." There was a long pause, and I could hear the television in the background and the kids playing. Then she continued, and her words cut through me like a knife. "We want this Christmas to be special, Isabella, positive and uplifting. And honestly, every time you come around, you just bring this heavy energy. You're always talking about work, about deals and properties and business stress. The kids ask why Aunt Isabella never smiles, why you're always on your phone, why you don't have a family of your own. I felt my chest tighten. Vanessa, I don't understand. Are you uninviting me from Christmas? It's not personal, she said, quickly, but her voice remained cold. It's just that Marcus's parents are coming this year, and they're very traditional. They believe in family values, in what Christmas should represent. And you represent something different. Something that doesn't really fit with the image we want to project. The words hit me like a physical blow. I sat there in my home office, surrounded by the success I had worked so hard to build, and felt smaller than I had in years. Image? I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. You know what I mean, Vanessa continued, and I could hear the impatience creeping into her voice. You're 34 and still single. You don't have children. You work all the time. You dress like you're going to a business meeting even at family gatherings. Marcus's parents are going to ask questions, and frankly, we don't want to have those awkward conversations about why my sister can't seem to find happiness in the normal things that make people happy. That conversation ended with me sitting, alone in my office, staring at my phone, trying to process what had just happened. My own sister had just told me that I wasn't welcome at Christmas because I didn't fit their idea of what family should look like. What Vanessa didn't know, what she had no idea about, was that for the past 2 years, I had been the one, keeping her family in their house. But that's a story for the next part of what I'm about to tell you. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Let me tell you a little bit more about who I am and how I got to this point in my life, because understanding my journey makes what happened next even more shocking. My name is Isabella Rodriguez, and I'm 34 years old. I currently live in a beautiful custom-built home in Millbrook Heights, which is about 40 minutes outside of Denver, Colorado. But I didn't start here. In fact, my story begins in a very different place. I grew up in East Denver, in a neighborhood called Riverside Flats. It wasn't the worst area, but it definitely wasn't the suburbs where my sister Vanessa lives now. My parents, Maria and Carlos Rodriguez, worked incredibly hard to provide for Vanessa and me. My father worked double shifts at a manufacturing plant, and my mother cleaned offices at night after spending her days taking care of us kids. Money was always tight in our household. We shopped at thrift stores, clipped coupons religiously, and learned to make every dollar stretch as far as possible. But my parents taught us something invaluable: the importance of education and hard work. They always said that knowledge and determination were the only things that could never be taken away from you. When I was 18, I received a partial scholarship to attend the University of Colorado, Denver, where I studied business administration, with a focus on real estate and finance. But even with the scholarship, money was incredibly tight. I worked 3 part-time jobs during college. I cleaned offices early in the morning before classes, worked at a local diner during lunch hours, and tutored high school students in the evenings. Vanessa, being 4 years younger, got to see the benefits of my sacrifices without fully understanding them. By the time she was ready for college, our parents' financial situation had improved slightly, and they were able to provide more support for her education. She went to Colorado State University, lived in the dorms, and had what most people would consider a typical college experience. She joined a sorority, went to parties, and met Marcus during her sophomore year. Meanwhile, I was grinding every single day. I graduated summa cum laude with my business degree, but more importantly, I had saved nearly $15,000 from my various jobs. While my classmates were celebrating at graduation parties, I was already planning my next move. I used that $15,000 as a down payment on a small, rundown duplex in a transitional neighborhood called Brookside Commons. The property cost $68,000, and it needed significant work. I spent every weekend for 6 months learning how to do basic plumbing, electrical work, and carpentry through YouTube videos and help from friendly neighbors. I lived in one unit of the duplex and rented out the other unit to help cover the mortgage payments. Every spare penny I made from my day job as a junior analyst at a commercial real estate firm went back into improving the property. I painted, installed new fixtures, updated the kitchen, and slowly transformed that rundown duplex into a desirable rental property. Within 2 years, I was able to refinance the property and use the equity to purchase a second property, then a third, then a fourth. I reinvested every dollar of profit back into acquiring more properties, always focusing on undervalued homes, in neighborhoods that showed signs of improvement. The work was exhausting. I would spend 40 hours a week at my day job, then another 30 to 40 hours managing my properties, handling tenant issues, coordinating repairs, and searching for new investment opportunities. I didn't date much during those early years, not because I wasn't interested in relationships, but because I was so focused on building something sustainable for my future. By the time I was 28, I owned 12 rental properties and had built enough passive income to quit my day job and focus on real estate full-time. I established Cascade Holdings, LLC, and began acquiring larger properties, small apartment buildings, commercial spaces, and even some distressed properties that I could renovate and flip. The business grew faster than I had ever imagined possible. Within 3 years, I was managing over 50 properties. By year 5, I had expanded into neighboring states and was overseeing more than 150 units. Today, at 34, Cascade Holdings manages over 200 properties across Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah, generating over $3 million in annual revenue. But here's what's important to understand. I didn't build this empire by being ruthless or taking advantage of people. My business philosophy has always been about creating win-win situations. I provide quality, affordable housing for families who need it, and I maintain my properties to standards that I would want for my own family. I've always believed in giving back to my community. Over the years, I've quietly helped dozens of families avoid foreclosure by purchasing their homes and allowing them to stay as tenants until they could get back on their feet financially. I've provided emergency housing for families displaced by fires or other disasters. I've even created a small scholarship fund at my old high school to help kids from low-income families pursue higher education. The success of Cascade Holdings allowed me to purchase my current home in Millbrook Heights 3 years ago. It's a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom custom build with a home office, a workshop where I can still do my own property maintenance when needed, and a guest house that I originally built hoping that Vanessa's family would visit more often. Despite all of this success, I've always remained close to my roots. I still drive a practical Honda CR-V instead of a flashy luxury car. I still shop for bargains and comparison shop for everything I buy. I still do much of my own property maintenance work because I enjoy it and because it keeps me connected to the practical side of my business. Most importantly, I've always prioritized family. Even as my business grew and demanded more of my time, I made sure to be present for every important moment in my niece and nephew's lives. I attended every school play, every soccer game, every birthday party. I established college funds for both Sophia and Daniel when they were born, contributing $500 each month to ensure they would have opportunities I had to fight for. This is who I am, a woman who built something meaningful from nothing, who values family above profit, and who has always tried to use her success to help others. But apparently, to my sister Vanessa, none of that mattered as much as the fact that I didn't fit her picture-perfect image of what Christmas dinner should look like. What happened next will show you just how wrong she was about who I really am and what I'd been doing for her family all along. To understand how we got to that devastating Christmas phone call, I need to take you back and explain the complicated dynamics that have existed in my family for years. The story of Vanessa and Marcus's financial troubles didn't start recently. It's been building for nearly a decade, and I've been watching it unfold with growing concern. Vanessa met Marcus during her sophomore year at Colorado State University. He was a business major, charming and confident, from what seemed like a well-established middle-class family in Fort Collins. Marcus's father owned a small accounting firm, and his mother was a high school principal. On the surface, they appeared to be the kind of stable, respectable family that my parents had always hoped we would both marry into. When Vanessa brought Marcus home for the first time during Thanksgiving of her junior year, I could see that my parents were impressed. He was polite, well-dressed, and talked about his plans to go into pharmaceutical sales after graduation. He seemed like exactly the kind of man who could provide the security and stability that our parents had worked so hard to give us, but had never quite achieved themselves. Vanessa and Marcus got married 6 months after graduation, when she was 23 and he was 24. It was a beautiful ceremony at a country club in Fort Collins, paid for primarily by Marcus's parents, though my parents contributed what they could. I was the maid of honor, and I remember being genuinely happy for my sister. She looked radiant, and Marcus seemed devoted to her. For the first few years of their marriage, everything appeared to be going well. Marcus landed a good entry-level position with a pharmaceutical company, and Vanessa found work as a dental hygienist. They rented a small apartment in Aurora, and for a while, they seemed to be building a solid foundation for their future together. But even during those early years, I noticed warning signs that made me uncomfortable. Vanessa would call me, excited, about some new purchase, a designer handbag, expensive dinners out, a vacation to Mexico that seemed beyond what two young professionals should be able to afford. When I gently asked how they were managing these expenses, she would laugh and say that Marcus was great with money and that they deserved to enjoy themselves while they were young. When the twins, Sophia and Daniel, were born 3 years into their marriage, everything changed. Suddenly, Vanessa and Marcus were dealing with the financial reality of supporting a family of 4. Vanessa took 6 months of unpaid maternity leave, which meant they were living on Marcus's salary alone. During those crucial early months, that's when the pattern of poor financial decisions really began to accelerate. Instead of downsizing their lifestyle to accommodate their reduced income and new expenses, they seemed to double down on spending. They moved from their modest apartment to a larger rental house in a better neighborhood, justifying the increased rent by saying the twins needed more space and better schools. Marcus, meanwhile, was struggling in his career. While he had initially shown promise in pharmaceutical sales, he seemed to have difficulty maintaining the consistent performance necessary for advancement. He would have great months, followed by disappointing quarters. His income became unpredictable, but their spending remained consistently high. I started to get concerned phone calls from Vanessa during this period. She would call asking for advice about managing money, about whether certain purchases made sense, about how to budget for childcare and medical expenses. I tried to be supportive while also gently suggesting that they might need to make some lifestyle adjustments. But whenever I offered concrete advice about cutting expenses or building an emergency fund, Vanessa would become defensive. She would say that I didn't understand what it was like to have children, that kids needed certain things, and that she and Marcus were doing fine. She would point out that Marcus was getting promoted regularly and that his income was steadily increasing. What I didn't realize at the time was that while Marcus was indeed getting promoted, he was also accumulating significant credit card debt to maintain their lifestyle during the leaner months. They had opened multiple credit cards, and Vanessa had no idea how much debt they were actually carrying. 5 years ago, when the twins were 3 years old, Vanessa called me with exciting news. She and Marcus had found their dream house. It was a beautiful 2-story colonial in Riverside Oaks, one of the most desirable neighborhoods in their area. The house had 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, a large backyard perfect for the twins, and was located in an excellent school district. The asking price was $385,000. With Marcus's improved salary and their combined income, they had qualified for a mortgage, though they were stretching their budget significantly to make it work. They were putting down only 5%, which meant a substantial monthly payment, plus private mortgage insurance. I remember feeling nervous about the purchase, but I didn't want to dampen Vanessa's excitement. She was so happy about finally having a home where she could host family gatherings, where the twins would have their own rooms, where she could create the perfect family environment she had always dreamed of. For the first 2 years in the house, they seemed to manage reasonably. Well, Marcus had settled into a regional sales manager position that provided more stable income, and Vanessa had returned to work part-time. They were making their mortgage payments, though I suspected they were using credit cards to bridge gaps in their monthly budget. But then Marcus's company went through a restructuring. His territory was reduced, his commission structure changed, and his annual income dropped by nearly $20,000. At the same time, the twins were getting older and more expensive. School supplies, extracurricular activities, clothes, medical expenses, and all the costs that come with raising active, growing children. This is when Vanessa's calls to me became more frequent and more desperate. She would call asking for small loans, $300 to cover a car repair, $500 for an unexpected medical bill, $800 when their furnace broke down in the middle of winter. Each time, she promised it was temporary, that Marcus was expecting a big commission check, that things were about to turn around. I always said yes. How could I not? These weren't requests for luxury items or vacations. These were basic necessities, emergencies that every family faces, and I had the means to help without it causing any financial strain on my own life. But I also started to realize that Vanessa and Marcus were living in a constant state of financial crisis. They were robbing Peter to pay Paul, using credit cards to make minimum payments on other credit cards, and always just one emergency away from serious trouble. What really worried me was that Vanessa seemed completely unaware of how precarious their situation had become. Marcus handled all the finances, and she trusted him completely. She knew they were tight, but didn't understand that they were actually in serious financial danger. This pattern continued for 3 years, with their situation becoming increasingly unstable. Marcus would have good months that would give them hope, followed by terrible months where they could barely make their minimum payments. They refinanced their mortgage twice to take advantage of lower interest rates, but each time they also took cash out to pay down credit cards, which they then promptly maxed out again. The breaking point came 2 years ago, just before Christmas, when Vanessa called me sobbing. Marcus had finally told her the truth about their financial situation. They were 3 months behind on their mortgage, had over $60,000 in credit card debt, and had received a foreclosure notice. They had 30 days to bring their mortgage current, or they would lose the house. That phone call changed everything, though Vanessa still has no idea just how much it changed everything. Because that's when I made a decision that would define our relationship for the next 2 years, leading up to that devastating conversation where she told me I wasn't welcome at Christmas dinner anymore. That devastating phone call from Vanessa about Christmas happened on a Tuesday evening in early November. I remember the exact date, November 7th, because I had just finished reviewing quarterly reports for Cascade Holdings. It had been an exceptionally good quarter, with 3 new property acquisitions and rental income up 18% from the same period last year. I was feeling optimistic about the future and looking forward to the upcoming holiday season. When my phone rang and I saw Vanessa's name on the screen, I smiled. We had been talking more frequently over the past few months, and I thought our relationship was in a good place. The kids were doing well in school. Marcus seemed to have stabilized in his job, and I hadn't received any emergency loan requests in several weeks. I answered cheerfully, expecting to chat about holiday plans or hear cute stories about Sophia and Daniel. Hey, Vanessa. Perfect timing. I was just thinking about Christmas plans. Should I make my famous cranberry sauce again this year, or do you want to try something different? There was an unusually long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear the television in the background and what sounded like Marcus talking to the kids upstairs. When Vanessa finally spoke, her voice had a strange, formal quality that I had never heard before. Isabella, I'm glad you called. That you answered. I was going to call you anyway because Marcus and I need to discuss Christmas with you. Something in her tone immediately put me on edge. Okay, I said slowly, setting down the financial reports I had been reviewing. What's going on? Well, this year is going to be different. Special, actually. Marcus's parents are flying in from Fort Collins, and we're also having his brother Jeremy and his family join us. Jeremy just got promoted to partner at his law firm in Denver, and his wife Amanda just had their third baby. It's going to be a really wonderful traditional family Christmas. I waited for her to continue, not understanding where this conversation was heading. That sounds lovely, Vanessa. The house will be full, but it'll be fun. Should I bring an extra side dish to help feed everyone? Another long pause. When she spoke again, her voice was even more stilted, like she was reading from a script she had practiced. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about, Isabella. Marcus and I have been discussing this for weeks now, and we've decided that this year's Christmas dinner needs to be more focused, more intimate. Just the people who really represent what Christmas and family should be about. My stomach started to tighten. I'm not following, Vanessa. What do you mean by focused? I mean that we want this to be perfect, Isabella. Marcus's brother is incredibly successful, and his wife Amanda comes from a very respected family in Denver. Marcus's parents are going to be evaluating how we're doing as a family, how we're raising the kids, what kind of life we've built together. This Christmas is really important for our family's reputation and future. I felt something cold settle in my chest, but I still didn't want to believe where this conversation was going. Okay, and what does that have to do with me? Vanessa took a deep breath, and when she spoke again, her words came out in a rush, like she wanted to get through them as quickly as possible. Isabella, you know I love you, but you have to understand that you don't really fit the image we need to project this year. You're 34 and still single, which is going to raise questions. You work all the time, even at family gatherings. You're always taking business calls or checking your phone. You dress like you're going to a board meeting even for casual, family dinners. And honestly, you make people uncomfortable with all your talk about properties and investments and money. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually felt my breath catch in my throat. Are you uninviting me from Christmas dinner? I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. It's not that simple, Vanessa said quickly. It's just that Marcus's family represents everything we want the kids to aspire to. Jeremy and Amanda have this beautiful marriage, 3 gorgeous children, a house in Cherry Hills Village, and they're both so accomplished in traditional ways. They're what success looks like when you do everything right. And I'm what success looks like when you do everything wrong? I asked, finding my voice again. That's not what I said, Vanessa snapped, and for the first time in the conversation, she sounded genuinely emotional instead of rehearsed. But yes, Isabella, if you want to put it that way, then yes. You represent a different kind of life, and it's not the kind of life that Marcus and I want the kids to think is normal or desirable. I sat there in stunned silence, trying to process what my sister had just said to me. In the background, I could hear 8-year-old Daniel laughing at something on television, completely unaware that his aunt was being told she wasn't welcome in their home anymore. The kids ask questions about you, Isabella, Vanessa continued, her voice getting stronger, more confident, as if she was convincing herself that what she was saying was reasonable. They want to know why Aunt Isabella doesn't have a husband, or babies of her own. They want to know why you're always working instead of having fun like other adults. Sophia asked me last month if you were sad because you don't have a family. Each word felt like another knife being twisted in my chest. These were children I had helped raise, children whose college funds I had been contributing to for years, children who I thought adored their Aunt Isabella. And what did you tell her? I asked. I told her that some people make different choices, and that Aunt Isabella chose work over family. But Isabella, I don't want to have to keep having those conversations. I don't want Marcus's family to see you and think that this is the kind of family we come from. I don't want them to question our values or our priorities. So, you're choosing Marcus's family's opinion over your own sister. I'm choosing what's best for my children and my marriage, Vanessa said firmly. This Christmas needs to be perfect, Isabella. I need Marcus's parents to see that we're successful, that we're stable, that we're raising the kids with the right values. Having you there, with all your questions about business and your inability to relate to normal family conversations, would just create awkwardness. I felt something fundamental shift inside me during that moment. It wasn't just anger or hurt. It was a deep, cold realization about who my sister really was, and what I actually meant to her. Vanessa, I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions I was feeling. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. You're telling me that I can't come to Christmas dinner because I'm successful in a way that doesn't fit your image of what family should look like. You're being dramatic, she said dismissively. It's just one Christmas, Isabella. Maybe next year things will be different. Different how? Will I suddenly be married with children by next Christmas? Will I suddenly fit your definition of what a successful woman should look like? I don't know, Vanessa said, and I could hear the irritation in her voice. Maybe you'll meet someone. Maybe you'll start prioritizing relationships over work. Maybe you'll understand what really matters in life. That's when I realized that this conversation wasn't really about Christmas dinner at all. It was about years of resentment. Years of Vanessa feeling judged by my success. Years of her believing that my choices somehow reflected poorly on her choices. Is that really what you think of me, Vanessa? That I don't understand what matters in life? I think you understand what matters to you, she said. But what matters to you isn't what matters to most people. And it's not what I want to matter. To my children. The conversation ended shortly after that, with Vanessa saying she hoped I would understand, and that maybe we could have lunch sometime after the holidays when things weren't so complicated. I hung up the phone and sat in my home office, surrounded by evidence of everything I had built, everything I had accomplished, and felt more alone than I had in years. What Vanessa didn't know, what she couldn't have possibly imagined, was that at that very moment, sitting on my desk next to those quarterly reports, was a mortgage statement for 1247 Maple Ridge Avenue, Riverside Oaks. Her address. A mortgage that I had been paying for the past 2 years to keep her family in the house where she was planning to host the perfect Christmas dinner that I wasn't good enough to attend. That mortgage statement sitting on my desk wasn't just any document. It represented the biggest secret I had ever kept from my family. For 2 years, I had been the ghost in the machine of Vanessa and Marcus's financial life, the invisible hand preventing their world from completely falling apart. And until that moment, sitting there after being told I wasn't worthy of their Christmas table, I had never questioned whether I was doing the right thing. Let me take you back to that desperate phone call from Vanessa 2 years ago, the one that changed everything. It was December 15th, and she was sobbing so hard I could barely understand what she was saying. Between gasps and tears, she managed to tell me that they had received a foreclosure notice. They were 3 months behind on their mortgage payments, owed over $8,000 in back payments plus fees, and had exactly 15 days to bring everything current or lose the house. Isabella, I don't know what to do, she had cried into the phone. Marcus finally told me how bad things really are. We have $63,000 in credit card debt. $63,000. I had no idea. He's been moving money around, making minimum payments with cash advances, and I thought everything was fine. I remember feeling my heart break for her. Despite all their poor financial decisions, despite Marcus's inability to manage money, Vanessa was genuinely shocked by how deep they had fallen. She had trusted her husband completely, and he had been drowning in debt while putting on a brave face for years. The worst part is the kids, she had continued. Sophia keeps asking why Mommy and Daddy are whispering all the time. Daniel drew a picture at school of our house with a big red X through it because he overheard us talking about losing it. Isabella, I can't let my children lose their home right before Christmas. I can't be the mother who ruins Christmas because we have to move to some tiny apartment. That conversation lasted for over 2 hours. Vanessa told me everything. Every credit card, every loan, every financial mistake they had made over the past 5 years. Marcus had been gambling on his commission checks, taking out cash advances when his sales were down, and refinancing the house twice to try to keep their heads above water. The total damage was staggering. $63,000 in credit card, debt across 7 different cards, $8,000 behind on the mortgage, a car payment they could barely afford, and monthly expenses that exceeded Marcus's income by nearly $1,500 every month. "I've called everyone I can think of," Vanessa had said. "Marcus's parents don't have that kind of money. Our parents definitely don't. I even looked into those payday loan places, but they won't lend enough to solve this, and the interest rates would just make everything worse." I listened to my sister pour out her heart, describing how she felt like a failure as a mother and a wife, how she was ashamed to tell anyone else in the family what was happening, how she didn't know how she was going to face the kids if they lost their home. And then she asked me the question that would define the next 2 years of our relationship. "Isabella, I know this is huge, and I know you've already helped us so much over the years, but is there any way at all, that Cascade Holdings could help us? Maybe buy the house from us and let us rent it back? Or co-sign for a loan? I'm desperate, and you're the only person I know who might have options." I told her I would look into it and call her back, but honestly, I already knew what I was going to do. I had more than enough liquid assets to solve their problem completely. The question wasn't whether I could help them. It was how to help them in a way that wouldn't destroy Marcus's pride or create family drama. That's when I came up with the plan that would keep their financial crisis secret while giving them a fresh start. I called my attorney, Rebecca Chen, the next morning and explained the situation. I wanted to purchase Vanessa and Marcus's mortgage from their current lender, Pinnacle Home Loans, and restructure their debt in a way that would be sustainable for their actual income level. Rebecca researched the process and called me back within hours. "Isabella, this is definitely doable, but it's going to be complicated. You'll need to create a separate entity to purchase the mortgage, and we'll need to structure it so that your sister never knows you're involved. If they find out, it could create serious family complications." We spent the next week setting up Aurora Financial Services, a mortgage servicing company that existed solely to hold Vanessa and Marcus's loan. Legally, Aurora Financial Services was a subsidiary of Cascade Holdings, but on paper, it looked like an independent company that had purchased their mortgage from Pinnacle Home Loans. The beautiful thing about this arrangement was that I could offer them terms that no traditional lender would ever approve. Instead of the 4.8% interest rate they had been paying, Aurora Financial Services offered them a 2.1% rate. Instead of their original monthly payment of $2,800, their new payment would be $1,800, a reduction of $1,000 per month. But that wasn't all. Aurora Financial Services also offered them a financial hardship modification that would allow them to roll their $8,000 in back payments into the new loan, and even more importantly, Aurora Financial Services had a debt consolidation program that would pay off all their credit card debt in exchange for adding that amount to their mortgage balance at the same low interest rate. I called Vanessa 3 days before Christmas with the good news. I told her I had been making phone calls and had found a company called Aurora Financial Services that specialized in helping families avoid foreclosure. They were interested in purchasing mortgages from families in distress and offering more favorable terms. "It sounds too good to be true," Vanessa had said suspiciously. "Why would a company do this?" I had prepared for this question. Apparently, they're a newer company trying to build their reputation by helping families. They make their money on volume and long-term relationships rather than high interest rates. The representative I spoke with said, "Your situation is exactly the kind of case they like to take on." The paperwork took 2 weeks to finalize, but by January 15th, Vanessa and Marcus's financial nightmare was over. Their mortgage payment had dropped by $1,000 per month. All their credit card debt had been eliminated, and they had a clean slate to rebuild their financial life. I had solved their problem by spending $197,000 of my own money, $63,000 to pay off their credit cards, $8,000 to bring their mortgage current, and $126,000 to purchase their mortgage from Pinnacle Home Loans. But here's what made the whole arrangement even more generous. That 2.1% interest rate I was charging them didn't even cover my cost of capital. I was essentially subsidizing their housing costs to the tune of about $600 every month. Over the course of 2 years, I had given up nearly $15,000 in potential investment returns just to keep their monthly payment affordable. Every month for 24 months, I had received their mortgage payment of $1,800, knowing that a market rate payment should have been at least $2,400. Every month, I had been quietly absorbing a $600 loss to ensure that Sophia and Daniel could stay in their bedrooms, that Vanessa could continue hosting family gatherings in her beautiful dining room, and that Marcus could rebuild his confidence without the crushing weight of impossible debt. I had told myself that this was what family does for each other. I had convinced myself that someday, when they were back on their feet, maybe I would tell them the truth, and we would all laugh about how I had been their anonymous fairy godmother during their darkest time. What that statement didn't show was that in 3 months, I had quietly prevented them from losing everything they claimed to value more than their relationship with me. I sat at my desk for what felt like hours after that phone call, staring at that mortgage statement and feeling something fundamental shift inside me. The numbers on the page seemed to blur together as the full weight of what had just happened began to sink in. I wasn't just hurt or angry. I was experiencing a clarity that I had never felt before about my relationship with my sister and what it really meant. The address at the top of the statement, 1247 Maple Ridge Avenue, was the same house where Vanessa was planning her perfect Christmas dinner, the one I wasn't sophisticated enough to attend. The monthly payment of $1,800 was money that should have been $2,400, money I had been subsidizing for 2 years without her knowledge. The perfect payment history showed that not once in 24 months had they been late with a payment to Aurora Financial Services, never knowing that their reliability was actually a payment to their own sister. I pulled out my calculator and started running numbers, something I did when I needed to process difficult emotions. The math was stark and undeniable. Over the past 2 years, I had given up $14,400 in potential investment returns by charging them below-market interest rates. I had spent $197,000 of my own money to rescue them from foreclosure and bankruptcy. And that didn't include the countless smaller loans over the years, the car repairs, medical bills, emergency expenses that I had never asked to be repaid. In total, I estimated that I had provided over $220,000 in direct financial support to Vanessa and Marcus over the past 5 years. $220,000 to help maintain a lifestyle that had now made them embarrassed to be seen with me. But the money wasn't even the most painful part. What hurt most was the realization that while I had been secretly sacrificing to preserve their happiness, they had been building resentment toward me for living my life differently than they lived theirs. I thought about Sophia and Daniel, my 8-year-old niece and nephew who apparently asked questions about why Aunt Isabella didn't have a real family. These were children I had been financially supporting through their college funds since they were born. Children whose home I had literally saved when they were 6 years old. Children who were being taught that their aunt's life choices were something to question and pity rather than respect. I opened my laptop and logged into the Aurora Financial Services account management system. There it was, all laid out in digital black and white, their loan details, payment history, current balance, and upcoming payment schedule. With a few clicks, I could modify their loan terms, change their payment amount, or even transfer the mortgage back to a conventional lender. For the first time in 2 years, I seriously considered what would happen if I simply walked away from this arrangement. If I sold their mortgage to a traditional lender, they would immediately face a payment increase of at least $600 per month, possibly more depending on current market rates. Their 2.1% interest rate would jump to whatever the current market rate was, probably around 5.8% or 6.2%. Their $1,800 payment would become $2,500 or more. Could they afford that increase? I doubted it. Marcus's income had stabilized somewhat, but they were still living paycheck to paycheck even with the reduced mortgage payment I had arranged. An extra $600 to $700 per month would probably put them right back into the financial crisis that had nearly cost them their home 2 years ago. But then I asked myself a different question. Why was that my problem to solve? I had rescued them once, quietly and generously, asking for nothing in return except the knowledge that I had helped my sister's family stay together and keep their home. I had continued to subsidize their housing costs for 2 years, essentially, paying them $600 every month to maintain the lifestyle that made them happy. And in return, I had been told that I was an embarrassment to the family. That my success was the wrong kind of success. That my life choices made them uncomfortable. That I wasn't the kind of person they wanted their children to aspire to be like. I stood up from my desk and walked to the window overlooking my backyard. Outside, I could see the guest house I had built 3 years ago, specifically designed with Vanessa's family in mind. I had envisioned weekend visits where the kids could have their own space to play, where Vanessa and Marcus could relax and we could spend quality time together without the pressure of their daily routine. They had visited exactly twice in 3 years. Both times, Vanessa had spent most of the visit on her phone, Marcus had seemed uncomfortable in my space, and the kids had asked repeatedly when they could go home to their own toys and their own rooms. I had built a guest house for a sister who found my lifestyle foreign and uncomfortable. I had been subsidizing a mortgage for a family who was ashamed to have me at their dinner table. I had been enabling a lifestyle that had convinced them they were better than me. Walking back to my desk, I made a decision that would have seemed impossible just hours earlier. I opened the Aurora Financial Services Management portal and began drafting a notice of mortgage transfer. It was a standard business document that would inform the borrowers that their loan was being sold to another servicing company and that their payment terms would be changing. The new servicing company I selected was Meridian Home Loans, a reputable but conventional mortgage servicer. I had worked with them before on other investment properties, and I knew they would treat Vanessa and Marcus fairly while charging market rates for their services. I calculated their new payment amount based on current market rates and their remaining loan balance. With a 5.9% interest rate, their monthly payment would increase from $1,800 to $2,640, an increase of $840 per month. But I wasn't done. I also drafted a letter terminating the debt consolidation program that had eliminated their credit card debt. Technically, Aurora Financial Services had the right to call in that portion of the loan if certain conditions weren't met. The condition I chose was change in borrower circumstances that affects their ability to maintain the modified payment schedule. Their rejection of a family member certainly qualified as a change in circumstances. This meant that the $63,000 in credit card debt that I had paid off for them would be reinstated as a separate loan with Meridian. Home loans, payable over 5 years at 8.5% interest. That would add another $1,200 to their monthly obligations. In total, their housing-related expenses would increase from $1,800 per month to $3,840 per month. An increase of over $2,000 monthly. I knew this would be devastating for them. I knew it would probably force them to sell the house, downsize their lifestyle, and face the financial reality they had been avoiding for years. I knew that Sophia and Daniel might have to change schools, that Vanessa's perfect Christmas dinners might become a thing of the past, and that Marcus would have to confront his inability to manage money responsibly. But I also knew that I was done being their secret safety net while being treated as their public embarrassment. I printed out the mortgage transfer documents and the loan modification termination notice. Both would be sent by certified mail and would take effect in 30 days, giving them time to understand their new financial situation and make arrangements. Then I did something I had never done before in any business transaction. I personalized it. I wrote a separate letter that would be included with the official notices, a letter that would finally tell them the truth about Aurora Financial Services and who had been behind their financial rescue. The letter was simple and direct. Dear Vanessa and Marcus, Aurora Financial Services is a subsidiary of Cascade Holdings, my company. For the past 2 years, I have been your mortgage holder, providing you with below-market interest rates and favorable terms to help rebuild your financial stability after your foreclosure crisis. I have subsidized your housing costs by approximately $600 per month, totaling over $14,000 in unrealized income. This arrangement is now being terminated, and your mortgage is being transferred to conventional servicing. I wish you the best in your future endeavors. Isabella Rodriguez, owner, Aurora Financial Services. I sealed all the documents in a certified mail envelope addressed to 1247 Maple Ridge Avenue, the house I had saved and the address where I was no longer welcome. As I walked to my car to drive to the post office, I felt something I hadn't expected: relief. For 2 years, I had been living a lie, pretending that their financial stability was independent of my help. Now, finally, they would experience the true cost of the lifestyle they valued more than their relationship with me. The letter would arrive in 3 days. Their new payment schedule would begin in 30 days. And for the first time in years, Vanessa and Marcus would have to face their financial reality without their guardian angel watching over them from the shadows. The certified mail envelope arrived at 1247 Maple Ridge Avenue on Friday, November 10th at 2:47 p.m. I know the exact time because I had requested delivery confirmation, and the notification appeared on my phone while I was in a meeting with potential investors for a new commercial property in Fort Collins. I remember staring at the notification for a long moment, feeling a strange mix of anticipation and dread. I didn't have to wait long for their reaction. My phone started ringing at 6:23 p.m. that same evening. Vanessa's name appeared on the screen, and I let it go to voicemail. She called again at 6:31 p.m., then 6:35 p.m., then 6:42 p.m. By 7 p.m., she had called 9 times without leaving a single message. At 7:15 p.m., Marcus called. I let that go to voicemail too, but this time he left a message. His voice was tight with barely controlled panic. Isabella, we need to talk immediately. There's been some kind of mistake with our mortgage company. Call me back as soon as you... Get this. This is urgent. 20 minutes later, Vanessa called again, and this time she left a voicemail that was completely different from any conversation we had ever had. Her voice was shaking, and I could hear tears. Isabella, please pick up your phone. Please. I don't understand what's happening. We got these papers from Aurora Financial Services, and they're saying our mortgage payment is going up to over $2,600, and there's something about our debt consolidation loan being terminated. The letter says Aurora Financial Services is part of your company. Isabella, I'm scared. Please call me back. I sat in my kitchen, holding my phone and listening to my sister's panic, and felt absolutely nothing. No satisfaction, no regret, no sympathy. Just a strange, hollow feeling that I had never experienced before. The calls continued throughout the weekend. Saturday morning brought 3 more calls from Vanessa and 2 from Marcus. Saturday afternoon, my phone rang, 15 times in 2 hours. By Saturday evening, they had started calling from different numbers, presumably borrowing phones from neighbors or using Marcus's work phone. Finally, on Sunday morning at 8:47 a.m., I answered. Isabella, thank God, Vanessa said, her voice hoarse from crying. I've been trying to reach you for 2 days. We need to talk about these papers we received. There has to be some kind of mistake. There's no mistake, Vanessa, I said calmly. Aurora Financial Services is transferring your mortgage to a conventional lender. Your new payment terms will begin December 1st. But Isabella, the payment is going up by almost $900. We can't afford that. And they're saying something about our debt consolidation loan being terminated. What does that even mean? I took a deep breath and decided to explain it in terms she would understand. It means, Vanessa, that the $63,000 in credit card debt that Aurora Financial Services paid off for you 2 years ago is now due as a separate loan. You'll be making payments on that debt again, in addition to your higher mortgage payment. There was complete silence on the other end of the line for nearly 30 seconds. Isabella, she finally whispered. Are you telling me that Aurora Financial Services was you? That you've been our mortgage company this whole time? Yes. Another long silence. You saved our house? 2 years ago, when we were going to lose everything, that was you? Yes. And you've been giving us a lower payment this whole time? You've been subsidizing our mortgage? Yes. I could hear her breathing becoming more rapid, more panicked. Isabella, if this is true, if you've been helping us this whole time, then why are you stopping now? Why are you doing this to us? That's when something inside me finally broke open. I'm doing this to you, Vanessa. I'm doing this to you? My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. I spent nearly $200,000 to save your house. I gave up over $14,000 in investment returns to keep your payments affordable. I have been secretly supporting your family for 2 years, and you want to know why I'm stopping. Isabella, I don't understand. You told me I wasn't sophisticated enough to attend your Christmas dinner. You told me I was an embarrassment to your family. You told me that my life choices weren't the kind of choices you wanted your children to think were normal or desirable. Vanessa was crying now, openly sobbing into the phone. I didn't know, she kept repeating. I had no idea it was you. If you had known what, Vanessa? If you had known I was financially supporting you, you would have treated me with basic respect? You would have valued our relationship? The only reason you're upset right now is because you're losing the money, not because you hurt your sister. That's not true, she protested. Isabella, I love you. You're my sister. I made a mistake about Christmas, but… You made a mistake? Vanessa, you didn't accidentally forget to invite me to Christmas dinner. You deliberately excluded me because you were ashamed of who I am. You told me I represent the wrong kind of success, the wrong kind of life choices. You told me I make people uncomfortable. Marcus took the phone at that point. His voice was strained, but attempting to sound reasonable. Isabella, listen, I think there's been a misunderstanding here. Vanessa was just stressed about the holidays, about my family coming to visit. She didn't mean those things she said. Marcus, I interrupted, your new mortgage payment will be $2,640 per month. Your reinstated debt consolidation loan will add another $1,200 per month. Your total monthly housing-related expenses will be $3,840. Can you afford that? The silence that followed answered my question. Isabella, Marcus said quietly, we'll lose the house. We can't afford those payments. Our monthly income after taxes is only about $5,200. With the car payment and utilities and everything else, we'd have maybe $300 left for food and clothes for the kids. Then I suggest you contact a realtor, I said. The Denver market is still strong. You should be able to sell the house for enough to pay off both loans and have money left over for a down payment on something more affordable. Isabella, please. Vanessa had taken the phone back, and she was begging now. Please don't do this. I'm sorry about Christmas. I'm sorry about what I said. I was wrong. Please, can't we work something out? Can't Aurora Financial Services give us more time to adjust? Aurora Financial Services doesn't exist anymore, Vanessa. It was a shell company I created specifically to help you. Now that you've made it clear how you feel about my help, there's no reason for it to continue. But the children, she whispered. Isabella, Think about Sophia and Daniel. They'll have to change schools. They'll lose their friends. How do I explain to them that we have to move because Mommy said something stupid about Christmas dinner? That moment was the hardest part of the conversation for me. I did think about Sophia and Daniel. I thought about their college funds, which I had been contributing to for years. I thought about their bedrooms, which I had helped preserve when they were 6 years old. I thought about all the birthday presents and Christmas gifts I had given them, all the school events I had attended, all the ways I had tried to be a good aunt. But I also thought about what Vanessa had told me, that the children asked questions, about why Aunt Isabella didn't have a real family, that they were being taught to see my life as sad and incomplete rather than successful and fulfilling. Vanessa, I said, you have 30 days from the date of the notice to make arrangements. I suggest you use that time wisely. Isabella, wait. I hung up the phone. Over the next week, the calls became more desperate and more frequent. They called from every number they could find. Marcus's work phone, their neighbors, Vanessa's friends, even their children's school. Each voicemail was more panicked than the last. Isabella, we talked to a realtor. The market has changed since. We bought the house. We might not get enough to pay off both loans. Isabella, Marcus is trying to get a second job, but it won't be enough to cover the new payments. Please call us back. Isabella, we talked to our bank about refinancing, but they won't approve us for the amount we need because our debt-to-income ratio is too high. Isabella, please, I'm begging you. The kids are starting to ask questions about why we're looking at smaller houses. I don't know what to tell them. By the end of the second week, the tone of the messages had changed from panic to anger. Isabella, this is cruel and vindictive. You're punishing children for something their mother said during a moment of stress. Isabella, I never thought my own sister would be capable of destroying my family over a holiday dinner invitation. Isabella, when we lose this house, when my children have to start over at new schools, when we're living in some apartment because we can't afford anything else, I hope you're happy with your revenge. But I wasn't seeking revenge. I was simply no longer subsidizing a lifestyle for people who had made it clear they were ashamed to be related to me. There's a difference, even if they couldn't see it. By the third week of November, when it became clear that I wasn't going to respond to their increasingly desperate voicemails, Vanessa and Marcus made a decision that would change everything. They decided to involve the rest of our family. The first call I received was from my mother, Maria Rodriguez, on a Tuesday evening around 9 p.m. My parents had moved to a retirement community in Lakewood 2 years ago, and they typically went to bed early, so a call at this hour immediately told me something was wrong. Isabella, mija, my mother said, her voice heavy with concern. Vanessa called me crying tonight. She says you're taking her house away from her. She says there's some problem with her mortgage company, and somehow you're involved. I don't understand what's happening. I could picture my mother sitting in her small apartment, probably in her nightgown and slippers, trying to make sense of a financial situation that was completely outside her experience. My parents had never owned property, never dealt with mortgages or investment companies. The complexity of what I had done with Aurora Financial Services would be impossible for them to understand. Mama, I said gently, it's complicated. Vanessa and Marcus had financial problems, and I helped them. Now I'm not helping them anymore. But Isabella, she says they're going to lose the house where my grandchildren live. She says their payments are going up by thousands of dollars. How is this possible? Why would you do such a thing? Before I could answer, I heard my father's voice in the background, asking my mother to put the phone on speaker. Carlos Rodriguez's voice came through clearly, with the same quiet authority he had used when I was a child. Isabella, your sister says you own her mortgage company. She says you've been controlling their house payments for 2 years without telling anyone. Is this true? Yes, Papa, it's true. And now you're raising their payments so high that they can't afford to stay in their house? I'm no longer subsidizing their housing costs. They're now paying market rates for their mortgage, the same rates anyone else would pay. There was a long pause. I could hear my parents talking quietly to each other in Spanish, words I couldn't quite make out. "Isabella," my father said finally, "I don't understand this business with companies and mortgages, but I understand family. Whatever disagreement you and Vanessa have, it shouldn't hurt the children. Those babies didn't do anything wrong." "You're right, Papa. The children didn't do anything wrong, but neither did I. After I hung up with my parents, I knew this was just the beginning." Vanessa had clearly decided that if she couldn't guilt me into changing my mind, she would mobilize the entire family to pressure me. The next call came from my Aunt Carmen, my mother's younger sister who lived in Colorado Springs. Aunt Carmen had always been the family diplomat, the one who mediated disputes and kept everyone connected. "Isabella, sweetheart, I just got off the phone with your mother. She's very upset about this situation between you and Vanessa. Can you help me understand what's really going on here?" I found myself repeating the same basic explanation. Vanessa and Marcus had financial problems. I helped them secretly for 2 years. Now I wasn't helping them anymore because of how they had treated me. "But Isabella, your mother says Vanessa's mortgage payment is going up by almost $1,000. That seems like more than just stopping help. That sounds like punishment." "Aunt Carmen, I've been charging them below market interest rates and subsidizing their housing costs. Now they're paying the same rates that any other family would pay for a mortgage of their size. And you did this without telling them? You helped them for 2 years without them knowing it was you?" "Yes." "Why, Misha? Why keep it secret?" That question caught me off guard. I had been so focused on explaining what I had done that I hadn't really thought about why I had chosen to do it anonymously. "Because," I said slowly, "I knew that if Marcus knew his sister-in-law was bailing him out of his financial mistakes, it would hurt his pride. I thought it would be easier for everyone if they could rebuild their lives without feeling like they owed me anything. And now I realized that keeping it secret was a mistake. They never learned to appreciate the help they were getting because they didn't know where it was coming from." 2 days later, the calls escalated when my cousin Miguel got involved. Miguel was Aunt Carmen's son, 2 years older than me and a successful attorney in Denver. Unlike my parents and aunt, Miguel understood business and finance, which made his call much more challenging. "Isabella, I've been hearing some concerning things from the family about a situation with Vanessa and Marcus. I did some research on Aurora Financial Services, and I have to say what you've set up is pretty sophisticated, but I'm worried about the legal implications of what you're doing." "What do you mean, legal implications?" "I mean that if you've been providing below-market financing to family members through a shell company, there could be tax implications you haven't considered. Gift taxes, imputed income, potential IRS issues. Have you been reporting the difference between market rates and what you were charging them as gifts?" I felt my stomach drop. In all my planning around Aurora Financial Services, I had focused on the legal structure and the mortgage documents, but I hadn't fully considered the tax implications of subsidizing their payments. "Miguel, are you saying I could be in trouble with the IRS?" "I'm saying you should talk to a tax attorney immediately. If the IRS decides that the difference between what you were charging and market rates constitutes gifts, and if those gifts exceeded the annual limit, you could owe significant taxes. And if Vanessa and Marcus received what the IRS considers taxable benefits, they could owe taxes too." After that conversation, I called my attorney, Rebecca Chen, and explained Miguel's concerns. Rebecca listened carefully, and then asked me to come in for an emergency meeting the next day. "Isabella, your cousin is right to be concerned," Rebecca said when we met in her office. "The way you structured Aurora Financial Services was legally sound for privacy purposes, but we may have created some tax complications. I'm going to need to bring in a tax specialist to review everything you've done over the past 2 years." While I was dealing with potential legal complications, Vanessa was apparently conducting her own investigation into my business affairs. She had started asking questions about Cascade Holdings, about how successful I really was, about whether I had the kind of money necessary to own a mortgage company. The breakthrough in her investigation came when she called the office of Aurora Financial Services directly. I had maintained a small office and phone number for Aurora Financial Services to make it appear legitimate, with calls forwarded to an answering service that took messages. But Vanessa was persistent. She called repeatedly, asking to speak to supervisors, demanding information about the company's ownership structure, threatening legal action if she didn't get answers. Finally, the answering service forwarded one of her calls directly to my office at Cascade Holdings. When my assistant, Jennifer, answered the phone and said, "Cascade Holdings, how may I help you?" Vanessa immediately knew she had found the connection. She was looking for, "I'm calling about Aurora Financial Services," Vanessa said. "I was told this number was connected to that company." Jennifer, not knowing the sensitive nature of the situation, confirmed that Aurora Financial Services was indeed a subsidiary of Cascade Holdings and offered to transfer the call to me. That's how Vanessa discovered not only that I owned Aurora Financial Services, but that my real estate business was much larger and more successful than she had ever realized. The next morning, I found out that Vanessa had spent the entire previous evening researching Cascade Holdings online. She had found our website, our property listings, news articles about our expansion into Wyoming and Utah, and even some industry publications that had featured me as a rising star in commercial real estate investment. The phone call I received from her that morning was completely different from any conversation we had ever had. "Isabella," she said, her voice tight with a mixture of anger and shock. "I had no idea how successful your business really is. I found articles about you online, pictures of properties you own, interviews where you talk about managing millions of dollars in real estate investments." I didn't respond immediately, waiting to see where she was going with this. "You've been letting us think you were just doing well for yourself, that you had a nice little real estate business, but you're actually wealthy, aren't you? Like really wealthy." "I've been successful, yes. Isabella, one article I found estimated that Cascade Holdings manages over $40 million in real estate assets. Is that true?" I had never shared specific financial information with my family, partly out of privacy and partly because I knew it would change how they treated me. "The article was approximately correct," I said. "And you've been sitting back watching us struggle with money problems, watching Marcus stress about his job, watching us worry about the kids' college funds, knowing that you could solve all our problems without it even affecting your lifestyle?" That's when I realized that Vanessa's investigation had led her to a conclusion that was going to make everything much worse. She wasn't calling to apologize or to try to repair our relationship. She was calling because she had discovered that I was wealthy enough that helping them wouldn't have been a sacrifice for me at all. And that realization had made her angry rather than grateful. The confrontation I had been dreading finally happened. On a cold Thursday evening, November 30th, exactly one day before their new mortgage terms were scheduled to take effect. I was working late in my home office, reviewing contracts for a new commercial property acquisition, when I heard a car door slam in my driveway. Looking out my window, I saw Vanessa and Marcus walking up to my front door, their faces grim with determination. This wasn't a casual visit. They had clearly come prepared for a battle. When I opened the door, Vanessa pushed past me without waiting for an invitation, Marcus following close behind. They looked like they hadn't slept in days. Vanessa's usually perfectly styled hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and Marcus's shirt was wrinkled like he had slept in it. "We need to talk," Vanessa said, turning to face me in my entryway. "Right now. No more hiding behind lawyers and mortgage companies and business arrangements. Just you, me, and the truth." I gestured toward the living room, but Vanessa shook her head. "No, Isabella. I'm not sitting down. I'm not pretending this is a friendly conversation. I want you to look me in the eye and explain to me how you can justify what you're doing to our family. Marcus cleared his throat and tried to take a more diplomatic approach. Isabella, we've spent the past 2 weeks trying to understand what's happening here. We've talked to lawyers, accountants, real estate agents, everyone we could think of. And what we've learned is that you have the power to solve this problem completely, and you're choosing not to. I have the power? I asked. You mean I have the money? Yes, Vanessa said bluntly. You have the money. According to the research I've done, you have more money than our entire extended family combined. You manage $40 million in real estate assets. Your company generates millions in annual revenue. And you're going to stand there and let your sister's family lose their home over a disagreement about Christmas dinner? I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. Is that what you think this is about? Christmas dinner? What else could it be about? Marcus interjected. Isabella, we know Vanessa said some things she shouldn't have said. She was stressed about my family visiting, worried about making a good impression, and she handled it badly. But people say stupid things when they're under pressure. That doesn't mean you destroy their lives over it. Destroy your lives? I repeated. Marcus, I spent nearly $200,000 to prevent your lives from being destroyed 2 years ago. I gave up over $14,000 in investment returns to keep your mortgage payments affordable. For 2 years, I subsidized your housing costs without you even knowing I was doing it. Without us knowing, Vanessa exploded. That's exactly the problem, Isabella. You helped us in secret, and then you expected us to be grateful for help we didn't even know we were getting. I expected you to treat me with basic respect as your sister. And I expected my sister to be honest with me about what she was doing, Vanessa shot back. Do you have any idea how humiliating it is to discover that for 2 years, my wealthy sister has been secretly paying my bills like I'm some kind of charity case? That comment hit me like a physical blow. Charity case? Vanessa, you called me, sobbing about losing your house. You begged me to help you find a solution. I found a solution that let you keep your dignity and your home, and now you're calling it charity? You should have told us it was you, Marcus said. We had a right to know who was helping us. Why? I asked. So you could feel embarrassed every time you made a payment? So Marcus could feel emasculated every month when he wrote a check to his sister-in-law instead of a legitimate mortgage company? I was trying to protect your pride. Our pride? Vanessa laughed bitterly. Isabella, you've been playing puppet master with our lives for 2 years, making decisions about our finances without our knowledge or consent, and you think you were protecting our pride? I was protecting your home, our home that you now want to take away from us because I hurt your feelings about one holiday dinner? The room fell silent for a moment. We were all breathing heavily, the anger and frustration of the past month finally boiling over. It wasn't about one holiday dinner, I said quietly. It was about you telling me that I represent the wrong kind of success, that my life choices aren't normal or desirable, that I make people uncomfortable, that your children see me as someone to pity rather than respect. Vanessa's expression softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. Isabella, I was wrong to say those things. I admit that. But don't you think your reaction is disproportionate? Don't you think forcing us out of our home is cruel? I'm not forcing you out of your home, Vanessa. I'm simply no longer subsidizing your lifestyle. But you can afford to subsidize it, she said, her voice rising again. That's what I don't understand. You found out online that you manage $40 million in assets. Continuing to help us wouldn't even register as an expense in your budget. You're choosing to let us struggle when you could easily solve our problems. So, because I'm successful, I'm obligated to support you? You're not just successful, Isabella. You're wealthy. There's a difference. Successful people have nice cars and nice houses. Wealthy people have the power to change other people's lives, and with that power comes responsibility. Marcus nodded in agreement. Isabella, we're not asking you to give us money for vacations or luxury items. We're asking you to help us keep our children's home. Sophia and Daniel are going to have to change schools in the middle of the year. They're going to lose their friends, their stability, their sense of security. And for what? Because their mother said something insensitive during a phone call? For what? I repeated. Marcus, let me ask you something. If I continue to subsidize your mortgage, if I go back to the old arrangement where Aurora Financial Services charges you below market rates, what happens next time you can't afford your lifestyle? What happens when your car breaks down, or when the kids need something expensive, or when you want to take a family vacation you can't afford? We'll figure it out, he said. The way you figured it out before you nearly lost your house. Marcus didn't answer. I turned to Vanessa. And what about you? If I continue to secretly support your family financially, are you going to treat me differently? Are you going to invite me to Christmas dinner next year? Are you going to stop being embarrassed by my life choices? Isabella, I said I was sorry about Christmas. That's not an answer, Vanessa. Are you going to stop seeing me as someone whose life represents the wrong kind of success? Are you going to stop teaching your children that their aunt is someone to pity? Vanessa looked uncomfortable, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. I don't know, she said finally. Isabella, our relationship is complicated. It's always been complicated. You're successful in ways that I don't fully understand. And yes, sometimes that makes me feel inadequate. Sometimes it makes me question my own choices. And that's my fault? It's not your fault, but it's also not my fault that your success makes me uncomfortable sometimes. That's just the reality of our relationship. Then maybe, I said, that's exactly why I shouldn't continue to financially support a lifestyle that makes you more comfortable with being uncomfortable around me. The silence that followed was heavy and painful. We all knew that we had reached the heart of the issue. This wasn't really about money or mortgages or Christmas dinner. This was about two sisters who had grown into very different people and didn't know how to relate to each other anymore. So that's it? Marcus asked finally. You're really going to let us lose the house? I'm going to let you make your own financial decisions and live with the consequences, the same way every other adult in the world does. Even if it hurts the children? Marcus, I've been contributing to Sophia and Daniel's college funds since they were born. I've attended every school play, every soccer game, every birthday party. I've been a good aunt to those children in every way I know how. But I will not be guilted into subsidizing your family's lifestyle by using them as emotional leverage. Vanessa and Marcus looked at each other, and I could see some kind of silent communication pass between them. Isabella, Vanessa said, what if we could work out some kind of compromise? What if you continued to help us but we made it official? We could sign papers acknowledging the help, or pay you back over time, or… No, I said firmly. Vanessa, the time for compromises was before you told me I wasn't welcome at your Christmas dinner. The time for working things out was before you decided I was an embarrassment to your family. They left my house that night, without resolving anything, but with a clear understanding that I wasn't going to change my mind. Their new mortgage terms would take effect the next day, and they would have to figure out how to afford them or make other arrangements. As I watched their car pull out of my driveway, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. Sadness because I had lost my relationship with my sister and her family. Relief because I was finally free from the burden of secretly supporting people who were ashamed to be related to me. December 1st arrived, and with it, the new mortgage, terms I had set in motion. I knew that Vanessa and Marcus would receive their first payment notice from Meridian Home Loans that morning, demanding $3,840 instead of their previous $1,800. I also knew they didn't have the money. What I didn't expect was the silence that followed. For 3 weeks, my phone didn't ring. No desperate voicemails, no angry texts, no calls from other family members trying to intervene. It was as if Vanessa and Marcus had simply vanished from my life completely. The quiet was both peaceful and unsettling. During those 3 weeks, I threw myself into work with an intensity I hadn't felt in years. I closed on 2 new commercial properties in Fort Collins, initiated the purchase of a small apartment complex in Cheyenne, and began preliminary negotiations for a mixed-use development project in downtown Denver. Without the emotional drain of family drama, my business focus sharpened considerably. But I also found myself checking real estate listings in Riverside Oaks more frequently than I wanted to admit, looking for any sign that 1247 Maple Ridge Avenue had been put up for sale. On December 22nd, the silence finally broke with a phone call from my cousin Miguel. His voice was carefully neutral, which immediately told me he was calling with news I probably didn't want to hear. Isabella, I wanted to give you an update on Vanessa's situation before you heard it from someone else. What kind of update? They filed for bankruptcy last week. Chapter 7. They're surrendering the house to the bank and walking away from both the mortgage and the debt consolidation loan. I sat down heavily in my office chair. Even though I had known this was a possibility, hearing it confirmed felt like a punch to the stomach. Where are they living? I asked. They found a rental house in Aurora near Marcus's work. 3 bedrooms. Smaller than what they had, but decent. The kids had to switch schools mid-year, but they're adjusting. And financially? Without the mortgage and debt payments, they're actually in better shape than they've been in years. Marcus kept his job, Vanessa picked up more hours at the dental office, and their rent is only $1,200 a month. They're living within their means for the first time since I've known them. Miguel paused, and I could hear him choosing his words carefully. Isabella, I think you should know that they're not talking badly about you to the family. When people ask what happened, they just say there was a business disagreement and leave it at that. I'm surprised. I think they're embarrassed, he said. The bankruptcy filing made their financial situation public record. Everyone can see how much debt they had, how they were living beyond their means. I think they realized that blaming you would mean admitting how much you had been helping them. After I hung up with Miguel, I spent the rest of the day thinking about what he had told me. Vanessa and Marcus had lost their house, but they were financially stable for the first time in years. The children had to change schools, but they were adapting. The family's lifestyle had been downsized, but they were no longer drowning in debt. In a strange way, my decision to stop subsidizing them had forced them to confront their financial reality and make changes they probably should have made years ago. 2 days before Christmas, I received an unexpected visitor. I was in my kitchen making coffee when I saw a small figure walking up my driveway. It was Sophia, my 8-year-old niece, bundled up in a pink winter coat and carrying what looked like a handmade card. I opened the door before she could knock, and she looked up at me with those serious brown eyes that reminded me so much of Vanessa at that age. "Hi, Aunt Isabella," she said quietly. "Mommy doesn't know I'm here. I walked over from our new house. It's only 6 blocks away." "Sophia, sweetheart, you can't walk by yourself like that. Does anyone know where you are? I told Daniel I was going to see you. He wanted to come too, but somebody had to stay home, in case Mommy came back from the store." I invited her inside and texted Vanessa immediately. "Sophia is at my house. She's safe. Please come pick her up." While we waited for Vanessa, Sophia sat at my kitchen table and handed me the card she had made. It was construction paper folded in half, with a drawing of what looked like 2 stick figures holding hands. Inside, in her careful second-grade handwriting, it said, "Dear Aunt Isabella, I miss you. Love, Sophia." "I made one for Daniel, too," she said, pulling another card from her coat pocket. "But he's too scared to give it to you." "Scared of what, sweetheart?" "He thinks you're mad at us because we had to move houses. He thinks it's our fault somehow." My heart broke a little. "Sophia, I'm not mad at you or Daniel. You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements that don't have anything to do with children." "Are you and Mommy going to stop being sisters?" "No, honey. Mommy and I will always be sisters. But sometimes sisters need time apart to figure things out." Vanessa arrived 10 minutes later, looking panicked and relieved in equal measure. When She saw Sophia sitting at my kitchen table. Her shoulders sagged with exhaustion. "I'm so sorry, Isabella. I had no idea she had left the house. I was only gone for 20 minutes to pick up groceries." "It's fine," I said. "She wanted to give me a Christmas card." Vanessa looked at the card still in my hands, and I saw her eyes fill with tears. "Sophia, you can't just leave the house without telling me where you're going. I was terrified when Daniel said you had gone to see Aunt Isabella. I wanted to make sure she knew we still love her," Sophia said matter-of-factly. The silence that followed was heavy with everything Vanessa and I weren't saying to each other. "How are you doing?" I asked finally. "Miguel told me about the bankruptcy. We're okay," Vanessa said quietly. "Better than okay, actually. Our new house is smaller, but it's cozy. The kids like their new school. Marcus and I are getting along better now that we're not constantly stressed about money." "And you're not struggling to make ends meet?" "No. For the first time in years, we have money left over at the end of the month. We're even starting to save a little." She paused. "Isabella, I know you probably think the bankruptcy was a cop-out, but it was actually the best financial decision we could have made. I don't think it was a cop-out. I think it was smart." Vanessa looked surprised. "Really? Really? You were drowning in debt that you never would have been able to pay off. The bankruptcy gave you a fresh start. Sometimes that's exactly what people need." We stood there looking at each other, and I could see that Vanessa wanted to say something more but wasn't sure how to say it. "Isabella," she said finally, "I know I can't undo what I said about Christmas. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry. But I want you to know that losing the house wasn't the worst part of this whole situation. The worst part was losing you." "You didn't lose me, Vanessa. I'm still here. But we're not the same, are we? We're not going to go back to the way things were." "No," I said honestly. "We're not. But maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. Maybe the way things were wasn't as healthy as we thought it was." Sophia had been listening to our conversation with the serious attention that children bring to adult problems they don't fully understand. "Does this mean you'll come to our Christmas dinner this year?" she asked. "It's at our new house. Mommy said it's going to be small this year, just family." I looked at Vanessa, and she nodded slightly. "Just us," she said. "No Marcus's parents. No pressure to impress anyone. Just our family, if you want to come." "I'd like that," I said. Christmas dinner at Vanessa's new house was indeed small and simple. The rental house didn't have a formal dining room, so we ate at the kitchen table. There was no expensive wine, no elaborate decorations, no attempt to create a magazine-perfect holiday experience. But it was the first Christmas dinner I had enjoyed with my family in years. Without the financial stress, without the pressure to maintain appearances, without the complex dynamics of obligation and resentment, we were able to just be sisters again. The children were happy and relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in their old house. Vanessa and Marcus seemed more connected to each other, more present with their family. And I felt like I could finally be myself around them, without wondering whether my success was making them uncomfortable. As I drove home that evening, I realized that while the events of the past few months had been painful, they had ultimately led to something better for everyone involved. Vanessa and Marcus were living within their means and building a sustainable financial future. I was free from the burden of secretly supporting people who resented that support, and our family was learning how to relate to each other honestly, without the complications of hidden assistance or unspoken resentments. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their dysfunction, even when letting them face the consequences feels cruel in the moment. 6 months have passed since that Christmas dinner at Vanessa's rental house, and I can honestly say that my life has changed in ways I never expected. The experience of cutting off financial support to my sister's family taught me lessons about relationships, boundaries, and the difference between helping and enabling that have transformed not just my personal life, but my entire approach to business and community involvement. Today, as I sit in my office reviewing the quarterly reports for Cascade Holdings, I'm looking at numbers that reflect the best 6-month period in my company's history. Without the emotional drain of family financial drama, without the constant undercurrent of guilt and resentment that had been poisoning my relationships for years, I've been able to focus on growing my business in ways I never thought possible. We've expanded into Utah with the acquisition of a 15-unit apartment complex in Salt Lake City. I've launched a new division of Cascade Holdings focused specifically on helping first-time homebuyers navigate the purchasing process through educational workshops and down payment assistance programs. And most importantly, I've restructured how I approach charitable giving and community support. The experience with Aurora Financial Services taught me that secret generosity, while well-intentioned, can create unhealthy power dynamics and prevent people from learning to solve their own problems. Now, all of my community assistance programs are transparent, time-limited, and designed to teach sustainable financial skills rather than simply providing temporary relief. For example, instead of secretly paying someone's mortgage, I might offer to match their savings toward a down payment if they complete a financial literacy course and demonstrate consistent saving habits for 6 months. Instead of quietly covering emergency expenses, I provide interest-free loans with clear repayment terms and financial counseling to help prevent future emergencies. This approach has been incredibly rewarding. I'm helping more families than ever before, but I'm helping them in ways that build their confidence and skills rather than creating dependency. The families I work with know exactly who is helping them and why, and they graduate from my programs with both financial stability and the knowledge to maintain it. My relationship with Vanessa has continued to evolve in positive ways. We have dinner together once a month now, always at her house, always simple and relaxed. She started bringing me her financial questions, not asking for money, but asking for advice. She wants to understand investments, retirement planning, and how to teach Sophia and Daniel about money management. Marcus has taken a part-time weekend job teaching youth soccer, something he's passionate about but had never been able to pursue when they were drowning in debt. The extra income isn't significant, but the personal satisfaction has transformed his entire outlook on work and life balance. Sophia and Daniel are thriving in their new school. They've made friends in their neighborhood, and without the constant, underlying tension of financial stress in their household, they seem more confident and outgoing. Sophia has started a small business selling friendship bracelets to her classmates, and she comes to me with questions about pricing and profit, margins that make me incredibly proud. The children don't seem traumatized by the house change or school switch. In fact, they seem happier and more secure now that their parents aren't constantly whispering about money problems or arguing about bills. It's been a powerful reminder that children's sense of security comes more from emotional stability than from material possessions or prestigious addresses. My parents have also grown to understand what really happened during those difficult months. Initially, they were confused and worried about the family conflict, but as they've watched Vanessa's family flourish in their new circumstances, and as they've seen how my business success has enabled me to help more families in the community, they've come to respect the decision I made. My father, Carlos, actually said something to me last month that I'll never forget. "Mija, I didn't understand what you were doing at the time, but I see now that sometimes the hardest way to love someone is to let them learn to stand on their own feet." The experience has also changed how I think about success and wealth. For years, I had been somewhat embarrassed by my financial achievements, trying to downplay my success to avoid making family members uncomfortable. I had been living smaller than my means, not because I needed to save money, but because I was afraid that visible wealth would create resentment or obligation. Now I understand that hiding my success was just as unhealthy as Vanessa's resentment of it. I've moved into a larger home in Cherry Creek, not because I needed more space, but because I wanted to stop apologizing for my achievements. I drive a car that reflects my actual financial status rather than trying to blend in with family. members who earn less than I do. This isn't about flaunting wealth or trying to impress anyone. It's about living authentically and allowing my success to be visible so that young people in my community can see what's possible when you work hard and make smart financial decisions. I've started speaking at high schools and community colleges about entrepreneurship and real estate investment. I share my story, including the mistakes I made with family financial boundaries, as a way to help other young adults think carefully about how they want to handle success and family relationships. The most common question I get from these students is whether I regret stopping my financial support to Vanessa's family. The answer is complicated, but ultimately, no. I don't regret it because the outcome proved that what I thought was helping was actually hurting. By subsidizing their unsustainable lifestyle, I was enabling them to avoid making the difficult changes that ultimately improved their lives. By keeping my help secret, I was preventing them from learning to appreciate support and preventing myself from receiving acknowledgement for my generosity. By continuing to help while being treated poorly, I was teaching them that my boundaries didn't matter and that my feelings were less important than their financial comfort. The hardest lesson I learned is that love doesn't always look like giving people what they want. Sometimes love looks like letting people experience the natural consequences of their choices, even when those consequences are painful to watch. I want to be clear that I'm not advocating for people to cut off family members at the first sign of conflict. Every situation is different, and family relationships are complex. But I do think there's value in asking yourself some hard questions about the family support you're providing. Are you helping someone solve a temporary problem, or are you enabling them to avoid solving a permanent problem? Are your family members treating you with respect and appreciation, or are they taking your help for granted while treating you poorly? Are you being honest about the help you're providing, or are you creating unhealthy secrets and power dynamics? And most importantly, is your help actually making their lives better in the long term? Or is it just making their problems more comfortable? Before I end this story, I want to ask you some questions, and I genuinely want to hear your thoughts. In the comments below, do you think I was right to stop financially supporting my sister after she excluded me from Christmas dinner? Should I have handled the situation differently? Have you ever been in a similar situation where you had to choose between family harmony and your own self-respect? And here's a bigger question. When family members achieve different levels of financial success, what obligations do the successful ones have to help the others? Is wealth a responsibility to family? Or is it a personal achievement that shouldn't create automatic obligations? I'm also curious about your thoughts on secret versus open family financial support. Do you think it's better to help family members openly, even if it might hurt their pride, or to help secretly, even if it prevents them from learning to appreciate the support? These are questions I'm still thinking about, and I'd love to hear different perspectives from people who have faced similar challenges. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe for more content about family dynamics, financial boundaries, and the sometimes difficult process of building healthy relationships with people you love. And remember, loving someone doesn't mean accepting poor treatment from them, and helping someone doesn't always mean giving them what they want. The most profound way to love someone might be to believe in their ability to solve their own problems and to stand by your own boundaries even when it's difficult. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the opportunity to discover their own strength. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.